This podcast has been brought to you by GM Moving, part of Greater Sports. We're here to help the people of Greater Manchester get moving and to improve lives through physical activity.
Hello and welcome back. I'm Eve Holt, Student Director at GM Moving. So today we're having a conversation around active ageing, so keeping moving as an old person in Greater Manchester. And I'm really pleased to be joined for today's conversation by Beth Mitchell, colleague at Greater Sport, Nicola Waterworth from Greater Manchester Ageing Hub and the Centre for Ageing, and Jane McDermott. Jane is from Manchester University. So looking forward to today's conversation. I hope you enjoy it too, and over to them.
Hi, my name is Beth Mitchell. I work at Greater Sport and I lead on active ageing for Greater Manchester. As part of my role, I deliver and manage the Greater Manchester Active Ageing programme, and alongside that I also work to influence our partners in the system to embed and integrate physical activity into the day-to-day lives of older people.
Nicola Waterworth. I'm the Greater Manchester Partnership Manager for the Centre for Ageing Better. So I'm based in the Ageing Hub in the Combined Authority, and the role of the Ageing Hub is to support Greater Manchester to deliver on the age-friendly strategy for Greater Manchester.
Fabulous. And Jane?
So I'm Jane McDermott. I'm a member of the Healthy Ageing Research Group at the University of Manchester. And I also work within the Policy Research Unit, where we advise the Department of Health and Social Care about the lives of older people and what's important to them.
And from where I've been sitting, you've been working as an absolutely phenomenal collaborative effort in Greater Manchester. So, and that's from me starting at Greater Sport just about 9 weeks ago, I think now. Wow. Definitely, it was a place where the Ageing Hub and Active Ageing and our work at Greater Sport seems to be a really good example of people coming together across these sectors to really make a difference in people's lives and make it a great place for people to grow older. So can you share a little bit pre-COVID about how you've been working together and what you've been doing?
I sit on the wider Ageing Hub meeting, which is obviously all of the sort of partners to the Ageing Hub coming together to share updates and what's happening across the sector really. And one, definitely strengthen the programme and the messages, and obviously especially at the minute in terms of the COVID-19 response, definitely amplified in the way we've worked collaboratively to get key messages out really quickly as well, and making sure it's a joined up GM approach.
I think that's the real strength of the model in Greater Manchester, is that it is this strategic partnership that brings together all the partners across Greater Manchester that have an impact on older people's lives, but also for us as a national charity at Centre for Ageing Better, we're able to bring our learning and evidence base, but also able to learn new things and test new things in Greater Manchester, working with partners like Jane at the universities, but also with partners like Beth who are delivering on the ground. So we can really kind of look at what works in creating change and try to amplify and scale that.
Fab. So Jane, can you tell us a little bit about the expertise that you bring, and I guess why this is such an important agenda in GM, but also why it's so important that we're doing it in this way?
So I think for us, obviously, we're a university, research strong university, and a lot of our work has been sort of at an international level, working with the World Health Organization. But our research was back in 2005 when we did the original trial about why strength and balance was a really critical part of later life. And the reason it's so critical is that it enables us to continue doing things that we really value, and that might be going out to the shops, seeing our friends, going to groups, doing a range of different things that enable us to be independent. So 15 years ago, we did that trial at Manchester, and we've been taking it all over the world and talking about it in lots of ways. And then, of course, because of the unique system that we've now got across GM, it really presents a great opportunity. And I did a piece of work a couple of years back with the Centre for Ageing Better, where we actually looked at a national picture to try and understand what was happening in communities around strength and balance, where is the evidence, And how can we make sure that people are really engaging it in the right way and delivering it in the right way so that we are really actually improving somebody's later life. And so it was interesting. We learned a lot. We took an appreciative inquiry approach. But what we found was that there were lots of gaps and holes. And so we was like, how can we fix that? And so Greater Manchester has some of the most fantastic examples of practice. And some really passionate people. So we just want to spread the love, but spread the evidence through the love, and to make sure that people are doing what we should be doing. So we know what works. We know about things like dose, the language of health, which is around prescriptions and dose. But people don't think about physical activity in that way. They don't think that actually it's certain types of exercise that need to be tailored to make sure that you will then be able to fulfill your later life. So it's making sure we get that key message across, that it is the evidence that we need to make sure people can change their lives, and changing the whole conversation, I think, within the health arena, away from a prescriptive drug arena into a prescriptive physical movement, language, which I think, again, has been a real culture change challenge. But for us, we know what the evidence is. We know that it works. We know it has a huge impact on life. And so, as well as enabling older adults getting the right type of community strength and balance programs that are available and should be available, and that's as a right, you should be able to access those services. We're also really interested in the prevention agenda, and Beth and I have been working really closely for the last sort of 6 to 12 months, looking at, well, how can we engage younger groups and start to think about that midlife when things do start to change for us. Our muscles start to change, our balance does start to change, little things start to be affected as we develop or get diagnosed with long-term conditions, and start to think about a tailored exercise program. So for me, strength and balance is the key. Strength, mobility, flexibility are the stepping stones into aerobic exercise as well. And so we're starting to think about all the different complexities around it, and how do we change behaviour? What conversations need to be happening? What's really, really important to an individual? What did you used to love doing? Well, you can do that again with the right support. So starting with the person.
So there was a huge amount there. So from really making sure there's a clear evidence base for what you're doing, and obviously the strength that you bring there as a university, and that's clearly benefiting not just people Greater Manchester, but pioneering and supporting beyond Greater Manchester. This real sense of the collaborative work within this kind of Greater Manchester ecosystem, and the opportunity that brings for that sort of systems change that you're talking around there, and the shift in the language, which feels really important, and it's moving from this medicalised perspective to actually the importance of moving as one part of how we live well and live longer, making that available for everybody, and then how we absolutely tailor that and recognise that we need to tailor it to people in a person-centred way, and that sort of strength-based person-centred approach that you're talking about, the different needs and the diversity of people. Just because you're older doesn't mean that you all have the same needs, does it really? There's a huge diversity amongst that. So that's a huge amount already to be doing, and then comes COVID. So suddenly, none of us planned for it, thrown into the middle, and older people have been definitely sort of high on the agenda in terms of COVID. But when you talk about language, the language I've heard is a lot around vulnerability, around elderly, around frailty. Certainly not the language that I think generally we're trying to advocate when we're thinking about actually, what does this mean to be an older person in GM? So can you say a little bit about how have you responded to COVID? What has this looked like for you? It's felt like a very rapid response has come from your side of you're working together. So what has that response looked like, and what have been some of the maybe challenges, but also what have been the opportunities that have come from that?
So can I just pick up from a kind of general aging or perspective? I think it was clear quite early on, but before lockdown, that obviously there was a specific impact on an older population, which kind of would require responses. And I think the strength of the Aging Hub was the network of those people in the kind of age-friendly community in the localities that we could draw on, people like Beth and Jane across all the other agencies, that we could quite quickly, with a few teething problems like everyone else, there was kind of a rapid move to using technology, but once we got over those hurdles, kind of bring together and say, okay, so what's happening, what we're hearing from older people and their experiences, and what are the issues here. I think physical activity being so important to later life for so many reasons, which Jane's already spoken about, it was really clear early on that it would be great to get messages out there through that network, that we could get them to people at this time. And I think that was the strength in what Jane was saying about, you know, we knew where the passion was and the love, but we also knew where the evidence was that we could draw on it. And it was a lovely thing to watch. It was like, Beth, Jane, we kind of need this. And it just kind of, to watch the information be pulled together was great, and really quickly. And with my colleagues at the Centre for Aging Better, because at the same time I think we were, you know, doing a tour of kind of national radio stations and saying, you know, promoting this issue about needing to move and exercise and strength and balance, and then see the resources pulled together, which we could then, that's only as good as getting them out there to people. And I know that Beth certainly got some information there about sharing about how they have got to people. So from our perspective, it just built on all the great work that we'd done building the partnership and having the evidence. And yeah, there were challenges, and I think there's probably challenges to come that we can come back to as well.
So do you want to say a bit more, Beth, around having built that strong network?
Yeah, I think obviously we've developed the active ageing programme over the last 2 years, and therefore we've got active ageing leads who are already present within each of the localities, which has enabled pulling information together and getting out to all established networks has been really key. Obviously there was a massive adaptation from going to delivering sessions, whether it be leisure centres, walking for health groups, to then every older person being confined to their own home, and obviously the lots of issues that rose immediately around digital exclusion, those that don't have a Wi-Fi connection, don't even know what the internet is, and then how do you then start to get, you know, those messages out to people in a targeted way. So there was a lot around that, and I think through the support of Jane and understanding that actually now more than ever, although myself and Jane have worked for the past number of months on trying to get that evidence base out there and make sure people are understanding the, you know, forgotten guidelines of strength and balance, now it became even more critical that one was providing that evidence base, but also safe and effective messages that, you know, with the market became, you know, populated with all different videos, fitness providers, but actually it was making sure that we were getting the right messages out for older people. So we've created, as an organisation, Great Sport created the Ways to Keep Moving webpage, which older adults had a specific section on, making sure that predominantly was strength and balanced and all evidence-based recommendations that people who were digitally included could take part in, and obviously strengths and limitations in terms of exercise. And then we worked with the That Counts GM Moving team to produce a specific older adults leaflet, real key messages to maintain daily living in the home. Really well received. I know a lot of localities have pushed that out through community hubs, in food packages, directed those that are already connected to physical activity services within the borough. And I know from Jane's messaging that it's been well received nationally as well, and a lot of other active partnerships across the country have wanted to utilise that as a resource. So it's really positive feedback to know that, you know, our message is being pushed nationally, but also we're getting the right messages out there to support people.
So there's lots there about how you've adapted, and
the
online, but also the importance there of having, you know, a physical leaflet as well, because lots of people are talking about how do they get these messages and the right messages to people that need them. So having that network and thinking about those different ways to do that. And how, I don't know if which one of you wants to share, but in terms of then the voice of older people at this point, both in getting that feedback to, you know, is it working, what's their experience, how are you managing to get the voice of older people in this, I guess, process and their feedback on what we're currently doing?
So, I mean, I could answer that. So as an extension from the brilliant booklet, leaflet that Beth and your team at That Counts put together, which is really fantastic. First fast at pace piece that we could get out there. We've now developed off the back of that a more in-depth booklet, which actually has a bit more information and a few more types of exercises that are both seated and standing, including warm-ups and cool-downs, to give a more holistic offer for a range of older people, and for those that maybe have long-term conditions and have been advised to stay at home currently. And so for us, the whole part of that process and getting this together has been working very closely with the Greater Manchester Older People's Network. So we've managed to access all the action group members, really fortunately by phone, but also some by digital, but in different ways to make sure that they are constantly feeding in. So that was including what the new booklet called Keeping Well at Home covers a range of different things. So it isn't just limited to movement, but it's also thinking about what we're eating and diet, and trying to sort of live as healthily, but also thinking about having a good mind and what it takes to sort of remain positive and be grateful for the things in our lives, looking out the window, watching the blossom, them kind of things. Just to kind of enable somebody who might suddenly be feeling quite alone, somebody that was going out a lot, was in a walking group, was in a strength and balance class, was going to bingo, whatever they were doing in their personal life, suddenly can't do that. So it's really important to us to help people find ways to remain socially connected as well. So it's a broad booklet. But for us, having the constant input and feedback from the Greater Manchester Older People's Network has been invaluable. Also, all the specialism that they have at the Ageing Hub, which has been phenomenal. Beth, I mean, we sent it out this morning as the first draft. I think I've had about 700 responses about who doesn't like what, how I'm going to level that, I don't know. But I will find a way, because there is always a way. I do love a bit of complexity. I live my life in complexity. But, you know, at the end of the day, it's about trying to get consensus so that we find we all serve the same purpose, and our purpose is actually to give people the best opportunity to stay well at home while they're there at the moment.
And have you seen that picture shift over the last few weeks, and are there ways in which you're having to continue to adapt as sort of the weeks go by?
I mean, I'm not so sure about in terms of moving. I mean, physical activity. Jane would be better placed to, I guess, talk about this. But is there a risk that, you know, if people have become more sedentary, is it going to get harder? But certainly, in terms of the range of issues that might be shifting for older people, as we've all been at home for longer. So the increasing feeling of isolation, some very practical things for older people like access to cash and lots of, there are lots of, kind of newer challenges, I think. So I think that's what's really important about the mechanisms that we've got for trying to feed in the intelligence around the kind of the population and what they might be experiencing, so that we can think about what new or other responses might be needed. Beth shared some information with me earlier about, was it Tameside, and some people being very much in contact with older people. So all those routes who were using the resources that have been put out there. So those routes to getting feedback are so important.
Yeah, and I think the way we're going to continue to adapt is how we look to, one, monitor the impact and who's using and who's taking part and what kind of people are our messages reaching, I think. So, for example, I've reached out to all localities, the aging leads, and asked for on who are they in contact with, do they have can they give an approximation of how many people they're reaching, and the feedback has been brilliant that those that are already attending classes, whether it be with a leisure centre, have all been contacted, supported them with Super 6 leaflets, so people are being reached in numerous ways, and rather than just physical activity messages, I think definitely for the more vulnerable people in communities. And then obviously we've been, Tracy and Ep from the Ageing Hub is working on sort of a telephone survey with those that might not be digitally, and one of those questions is going to be around sort of, were you active prior to COVID, and if you were, what did you do, how have you adapted, and sort of some questions, have you seen whether it's, you know, whether we can gather information that, oh, I've received this leaflet in a care package, or trying to understand who's got in what message and what people are taking part in, so we can gather some feedback that way.
Yeah, I mean, at the university, we're in the policy research unit level, that we are extensively doing lots of different types of research, feeding it into DH, but also continuing to have the voice of people in that, in all the work that we're doing to help the right type of decision making. But also we've just produced a leaflet specifically aimed at people with cognitive diversity and those living with dementia, supporting people with dementia, which is going to come out quite soon. So it's just kind of thinking about the broader complexities that we're living in to make sure that everyone feels okay, feels supported. And in many ways, you know, the fact that we're having these projects and we're doing these things enables us to keep in touch with people, because we're constantly wanting to get their opinion, their feedback, so people do still feel engaged in new ways rather than just in the old ways where we might have everybody in a room together. And so I think it's kind of helping us rediscover parts of communication that we might have lost, which I think is always a good thing.
I certainly share. I'm an optimist like you, Jane. So I keep seeing all these elements as well of this, I guess, outpouring of love and neighbourliness and people connecting in new ways, and actually some people connecting more and going back to things like telephone trees and things that maybe we forgot about, which provide a great way of keeping people sort of together, and also a level of empathy. I mean, it certainly has provided a space in which it's enabled some people to, you know, as their lives have changed, to maybe identify a little bit more with what it can feel like to feel isolated, to be at home, what other people, the realities of other people's lives day to day pre-COVID suddenly has become, you know, a step closer really to them. And also I think I've spoken to people who feel that their own aging has for the first time become present to them. It was something that was for other people, and suddenly this has brought it, you know, as something that they're thinking about maybe for the first time, as well as for their own relatives. So it feels like there's a lot of learning which can hopefully we can take forward into what next. So is there anything we've kind of focused on, I guess, the response and the need for current response, and that, you know, continuing to adapt to meet different people's needs? Is there anything in particular you'd want to say in terms of what you're thinking about what happens next? What happens as we, you know, hopefully get over the peak and start to think about what at the end of the crisis and what this means for our older population, and what we can take forward really into the future?
I think for the future of active ageing, obviously until we sort of come past this current crisis, we're not really going to have an idea of the full impact of how it's changed behaviours. So previously, for the past 2 years, we've been working through the active ageing programme to try and change behaviours and increase physical activity. Understand the impact that this has had. I'm trying to look at it as a positive and say, well, actually, although the behaviour of attending a weekly walking group or attending a walking netball session, older people may have been taking the guidance, those that are able to go out for the daily walk, they've done before, and therefore that could be a behaviour change which carries on post-COVID and people become more active that way. But again, we're not going to understand whether that is the case, or whether people have really want to get out and get back active due to the contact with people we get there. I don't know what the full impact will be, but hopefully just trying to keep as positive as possible that we, and obviously the adaptation to people exercising in their own home and having that information of what's important could continue. And actually, if it is a routine for an older person now to get up and do the Super 6, hopefully, fingers crossed, that'll continue post-COVID. So it could have a really positive impact, and it could actually be, although it's a very negative situation generally, it could have a really positive outcome for older people.
Some great potential new habits there in terms of both what it means to work out at home, which for more people has become suddenly a norm, and being more creative and inventive about what that looks like, as well as really for those that can get out of the house. It feels like such a gift now, doesn't it, when you do? So, you know, that daily walk, like you talked about, Jane, kind of just noticing things, the small things, the sound of birds, the blossoms. We've been lucky to be graced with this gorgeous weather, but those little things that can somehow, you know, really lift our mental and physical health in the day, which currently feel like a gift when it's only allowed once a day, and how we can continue for people to treat it in that way and that become a real habit going forward. Is there anything else that you want
the one
to add?
that I was going to just comment on was it struck me is about, you know, we need to also understand what we learn about who was able to take on those messages and who wasn't, and how that links with, you know, kind of aging as an experience across the board. So as a kind of centre for ageing better, one of our other priorities around safe and accessible housing. It is more difficult to exercise daily if you're not living in appropriate, safe, accessible housing. I think I'm also minded to think that, those spaces outside are great now because they are considerably more car free. The pavements, the roads, they're much more accessible in many ways, aren't they, for people? While I'm cycling along the country roads, we're forever coming across couples out walking together, like you say, hand in hand. So the built environment that we live in, how is it serving our lives? So it's kind of thinking about what we need to take from the situation that joins up across the kind of whole piece about how we all age throughout life and what we need from the spaces and the places that we live in, and the means also, you know, to do those things as well.
Capturing those stories feels so important, doesn't it? So we don't forget all of that, forget how different it can feel at the minute and what we want to take. Is there anything you'd want to add, Jane?
No, not really. I just think there's some great learning. I'm, hopeful that if this does last 6 to 8, 12 weeks, typically that's when behaviour change starts to actually happen and be registered, become a new habit. So I'm all with Beth on the Super 6 or any other type of standing exercises. Them as the stepping stones into great aerobic activity. Reinforce what you're saying about just, that gift of getting an hour a day outside and how precious that is. But also thinking about, the more complex issues around different people's lives and living in tower blocks and what that might mean to not being able to get out or, and how we really need to address some of those. I think already for us, we're looking at future research needs. What will deconditioning look like? So maybe people that haven't been able to move so much, how do we really enable that? And what would be a good evidence-based approach? How we can equip our workforces as they return to really help people to start with a whole new way and let everybody use all the facilities that are available to them in a way that is accessible so that we have tailored programs. So it's a big task to happen, but I'm excited about it because I think there's lots of potential there in terms of really getting people. Doing home exercise has been one of the biggest challenges, and here we did it on a plate.
Fantastic. Well, it'll be good to come back. Let's come back together in let's say a few months' time and see where we're at really, and see what's continued to evolve and what's sticking, and any of those stories which feel so important to keep kind of gathering really to see what people are enjoying at the minute, what they're getting out of it, and how we can help that going forward. So more of a personal question now, which is, so for you, how do you like to move, and has that changed during COVID lockdown? Who wants to take that one first?
Well, I did walk the dog prior, but not as often as I am now. Taking any normally would argue between.
On then, Nicola.
So I'm normally quite a runner, but I seem to have developed a lockdown injury in my foot.
Oh dear.
So that's a bit of a shame. So I also go to the gym, and my gym has lent us equipment, so that was really good thing to do early on. So I'm just having to try and motivate myself to fling that stuff around rather than be told, which is what I like about going to the gym. And I've taken to riding my bike for the first time in months, apart from going to the train station and back. So nice little hours also ride from home on the bicycle has been really nice. It's so beautiful out there. So that's a really good habit that I'm welcoming back into my life.
Fantastic.
So for me, I'm a cyclist. I cycle to work and back, but I think it's been lovely, rather than just using it in an active travel sense, using it to actually enjoy the surroundings. So similar to what you've said, Nicola, getting out. An absolute bonus has been that it's PE with mum. So my kids are out and like, we'll do a bike ride. And so I was like, yeah, we'll do that. So PE with mum 3 times a week is going very well. So that's been an unexpected absolute joy. Because one of my sons really loves cycling and actually has now found the thing that he loves, and it's taken us a long time, so that's been a real bonus. And I've started a clinical Pilates course. I've got a long-term condition. I was diagnosed 2 years ago. So I have very severe osteoarthritis, so I need 2 new hips, so I can't run. I used to be a runner, I used to love running. So now I'm kind of trying to do other types of exercises. So practicing what I preach and doing strength and balance, doing the right type of muscle flexibility programs. And I have to say, they do work. It does work. So yeah, so I'm just doing a lot of that, which has been great. And I've been using some digital resources, which has been good.
I might need to ask you for some tips, Jane, on this PE with mum. I'm struggling to get my 3 to do anything at the minute. They don't want to go out. They liked cycling and running before this, but now it seems to be an excuse to stay inside. Barely move. But anyway, I'll keep working on that one. I might be in touch with some tips. Thank you all so much for your time today, and just for everything you're doing, and what really inspiring. So I hope other people listening have taken some tips and been inspired. If anybody watching or listening does want to get in contact and find out more, what's the best way for them to do that?
We have a Aging Hub Twitter feed, which is at GM Aging Hub, probably the most public facing. And Beth, I don't know if you have, is there a specific Active Ageing?
It's both Twitter or social media, and same for Greater Manchester Moving, and our comms team will guide any messages to me with regards to Active Ageing.
And we've got a range of like Twitter accounts. I'm on Twitter as well. I'm happy for people to direct message me or contact me, or even by email. I don't mind. I'm always happy for anyone to ask any questions or for help.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much.
If you've enjoyed this podcast, why not share it or tell a friend about it? And if you've got feedback or ideas for future episodes, please get in touch with our team at Greater Sport using the links that you'll find on our podcast page.